Good day to everyone. This is the subject Understanding the Self, Week 3, which is the Self as Cognitive Construct. And this is the self learning video together with the learning module. Now, to this topic, let us have identify the different perspective of who am I. Give comparison each perspective of theorists. And last is to give insights based on experiences. Let's ask self, who am I? Where I came from? What makes me unique? And what is my purpose in this world? In confidence or in an attempt to avoid further analytical discussion, a lot of people say, I am who I am. Yet, this statement still begs the question, if you are who you are, then who are you that makes you who you are? Let's find out to some perspective. First is from William James. William James was one of the earliest psychologists to study the self and conceptualize the self as having two aspects, the I and the me. The I is the thinking, acting, and feeling self. The me, on the other hand, is the physical characteristics as well as psychological capabilities that makes you who you are. Another from Carl Rogers' theory of personality also used the same terms. The I as the one who acts and decides, while the me is what you think of or feel about yourself as an object. So if we try to compare and contrast the perspective of Carl Rogers and William James, so William James states that the I is the thinking, acting, and feeling, but to Carl Rogers, it is the me. And it's opposite also with the me concept of William James, because it is more on the physical characteristic as well as psychological capabilities. It is more on the intelligence and also the your built, or for example if you're a male or a female, while to the perspective of Carl Rogers, it is on the I aspect. So other concepts similar to self are identity and self concept. First, identity is composed of personal characteristics, social roles, and responsibilities, as well as affiliation that defines who one is. For example, you are a man, you should be on the physical or activities, and when you are a woman, you are in the aspect of household activities. So sometimes our society defines our identity. And another is the self concept, is what basically comes to your mind when you are asked about who you are. So for example, if to those in the LGBT community, they believe they are as women. Well, in fact, when we say the biological aspect, they are men. So so another concept is from Sigmund Freud. So he saw the self, its mental processes, and one's behavior as the result of the interaction between the id, the ego, and the superego. We have already discussed this on the module 1 about Sigmund Freud's concept or the provinces of mind, which is the id, the ego, and the superego, which you say that id is the one who is always on the pleasure part. The ego decides between the id and the superego, and the superego, which is the moral. There are times, however, when we are aware of our self concepts. This is also called as self-awareness. So from Carver and Schreier, identified two types of self that we can be aware of. First, the private self of your internal standards and private thoughts and feelings. So, it is says that about what you says on yourself, or what do you think of yourself. Another is the public self of your public image, commonly geared toward having a good presentation of yourself to others. So it says that what the other people says on you. It's like this. So from the self-awareness presents us with at least three other self schema: the actual, ideal, and out self. So when we say schema, what we think of, or the what we say on ourselves. First is the actual self. It defines us as who you are at the moment. So at this moment, what are you? You are a student, right? Another, the ideal self, which is who you like to be. Okay, you want to be maybe a teacher, or you want to have a characteristic like a teacher, or you act like a teacher. And the last, the out self, which who you think you should be. Okay, or what kind of you should be. So maybe positive or negative depending on the circumstances and our next course of action. It can also keep you from doing something dangerous. Can be too much that we are concerned about being observed and criticized by others, also known as self-consciousness. So it is sometimes defined as that we become self-conscious on our actions. And that is also the time that you are pressured, and also you sometimes have yell or creating an impossible of you. From the perspective of B.F. Skinner, which is from the scientific behaviorism, so B.F. Skinner is well known to his experiments. For example, the operant conditioning, which there is a dog which salivates, and also when punished, and also another reinforcement. So he studied about the human behavior in a scientifically way, which he says that behavior can be best be studied without reference or motives. To be scientific, Skinner insisted that psychology must avoid internal mental factors and confine itself to observable physical events. So our environment um, affects us, shapes us. Okay, so when we are in a traumatic family, our also behavior is somewhat weakened or in altered way. Okay, if we are in a family that is supported, and where love is the center of the family, we become also a lovable person or a healthy person. However, Skinner did not totally deny the existence of internal state. They exist, but they cannot explain behavior. So if you remember, it is also mind over matter, or what we think of, we act of. So sources of human behavior. So first is the natural selection, which means behaviors that were beneficial throughout history tended to survive. Those that were not in reinforcing were forgotten. And second is cultural practices. We adopt behavior that are remnants of cultural practices. For example, bowing or magmano sa mga nakakatanda. Sa Japan naman is to bow. Sa ibang bansa naman is lumuhod. May mga ganun aspeto. And another is the individual history of reinforcement. So behavior is shaped by one's personal experience of rewards and punishment. So when we say operant conditioning, so our response to this is that we respond to a specific stimulus, and involuntary, reflexive, and automatic. Another respondent behavior has no effect on the environment, which is opposite, that the environment affects us. And another is the operant behavior, so voluntary in response to an environmental stimulus or reinforced to us. And another is operant behavior, operates on the environment and as a result changes it. And the consequences of action influence whether or not they will occur again. Remember, reinforcement increases behavior. So, if you remember when you are a child, when you do something good in with your parents, or you something, kunwari naglinis ka ng bahay, then they will provide you a reward. Tapos you feel that doing good or cleaning the dishes will continue to make you reward, or to give you reward more. But punishment decreases behavior. So if reinforcement is a plus, punishment minus our behavior. So for example, we tend to lie, so we are punished about it. Or when you remember in the class, when we have a face-to-face class, kapag maingay ka, pinapalo ka ng teacher. So that's a punishment, right? Or tatapunan ka ng chalk. From infancy on, we display many behaviors, and those that are reinforced will strengthen and form patterns. This is how Skinner conceived of personality as a pattern or collection of operant behaviors. So remember, operant behaviors is a collection of everything that we've learned on the past, or on the we are in the environment. So what other psychologists says is neurotic or abnormal behavior was nothing more mysterious to Skinner than that the continued performance of undesirable behaviors that somehow have been reinforced during our childhood days. So when we are young, when we experience traumatic events, and at the same time we are deeply hurt emotionally and psychologically, over the years it will manifest. For example, the movie Joker. So if you remember Joker, when he was a child, he was beaten very badly, and at the same time he was with a bad health, and also with a bad environment. Yung mama niya may sira pa sa ulo. So over the years, na-form yung personality niya na disruptive, and at the same time parang naging kontrabida siya sa mga lipunan, or naging psychopath and sociopath. So from the schedules of reinforcement, so when we say reinforcement again, it provides us to do the behavior again. So for example, fixed ratio. Pag sinabing fixed ratio, there is a fixed number of responses that must occur before the behavior is rewarded. So for example, when you have having a job, so 15:30, di ba, meron kang salary. So salary becomes your reward. So it's a fixed ratio. So kung 3,000 ang makukuha mo within 15 days, then 3,000 din ang makukuha mo for the next 15 days. Another is variable ratio. So behavior is reinforced after unpredictable number of responses. So remember the slot machine or yung lotto, 'di ba ano yun siya, unpredictable and at the same time iba din yung makukuha mong reward. So it is a behavior na kung tataya ka parati, there are times na mananalo ka na ganito ang nanalo mo, kunwari 6 digit ang makukuha mong premyo. For the next naman, hindi na naman 6 digit, possible lang na 3 digit at 3 digit lang ng ang makukuha mo. So may mga ganon. So experiences. And then another is the fixed interval. So behavior is reward after a set amount of time. So it is not guarantee kung kailan mangyayari or kailan mabibigyan or makukuha ang reward. So principles of conditioning. So extinction, it means this happens when condition response disappear after a long time of unpairing a condition response. Another is the spontaneous recovery. This occurs when a learned response re-emerges after a period of extinction. And then stimulus generalization. This is a tendency to respond to a similar stimulus to the original condition stimulus. So inner state. So we have inner state. So yung panloob natin. Self-awareness. So sometimes it is a point also with our thoughts or yung ano yung sinasabi natin sa sarili natin. Okay? Or if you experience self-talk, it is already a self-awareness. So Skinner believed that humans not only have consciousness but are also aware of their consciousness, their own thoughts, feelings, recollection, and intention. So are you aware of your thoughts, feelings, recollection, and intentions? If there is consciousness, there is also unconsciousness. Another is drives. So drives are not causes of behavior, but only explanatory fictions. So drives simply refer to the effects of deprivation and satiation. So for example, when you are a child, you did not have this gadget. So over the years, or a toy, over the years, you tend to have a drives that to have this. Okay? So sa mga boys, for example, dati wala silang laruang kotse. And then nung lumaki sila, nung able na kaya, naging drive nila yun na mangolekta ng mga kotse. Another is from emotions. So Skinner says that recognize the subject existence of emotion, but he insisted that behavior must not be attributed to them. So we have the basic emotion, which is sad and also happiness. Okay, then over the years it develops, but it doesn't mean that our emotion is abnormal, but rather it is normal to us. So from the perspective Albert Bandura, which is a modeling theory, so modeling is the way we perceive and also copied to our they call this to our parents. So we tend to model, and also what we see on our environment. So for example, if your father is having or always nagsisigarilyo, ikaw din most probably on your for the next years you will also have tend to copy with this behavior. Or yung mama at papa mo nagmumura, nagmumura din. So, si Albert Bandura, famous din sa kanyang experiment, yung Bobo doll. So, sa Bobo doll, there are children and then may pinapalabas na sa TV na isang show na yung adult sinisipa ang isang doll. Tapos nun, ang mga bata sa loob ng room may nakitang malaking doll na kagaya yung nakikita nila sa TV. At yun, ginaya nila ang ginawa ng matanda. So, ganun ang kanyang experiment. So, our personality is based on what we observe and the process of our observational learning. So, sa kanyang theory, what we see is what we become. Okay? So, sa kanyang theory, meron pa ring self-reinforcement and self-efficacy. So, pag reinforcement, we increases our behavior. It is sometimes an eternal, and also in the aspect of Albert Bandura, we tend to motivate ourselves. So what we copy with our environment, we tend to follow it. And what we see and say to ourselves, we become like it in the future. So if you say to yourself you are a bad person, then you will do bad things. If you say that you are a very bright person, and then your behaviors or your activities would tend to be reflected on what you see on yourself. Okay, so activity 1, search for the movie Sybil or Sibyl. Watch it and if possible, download it. Try to understand how disruptive her life and how her case unique. Answer the following questions. 2 paragraphs, 3 sentences per paragraph to each question. First, how her personalities form. And then second, based on the movie, who are the characters that affected her life. Third, cite the events that Sybil experiencing, traumatic and disruptive to her life that leads to her condition. Fourth, in your opinion, how our world form our personalities. Fifth, in your opinion, what makes a person evil? Activity 2, search for the movie Silence of the Lamb. Watch it and if possible, download it. Try to understand how disruptive her life and how her case unique. Answer the following questions. 2 paragraphs. Remember that you need to have 2 paragraphs, 3 sentences per paragraph, and to each question. First, what kind of personalities does the protagonist possess? So when we say protagonist, yung bida. Second, based on the movie, who are the characters and describe them each. Third, what kind of personalities does the antagonist possess? So kontrabida. Fourth, the main antagonist wants to experience a metamorphosis or a changes on his body. What is the main reason of it? Fifth, in your opinion, why our childhood experiences is important in the development of personalities. Better to cite an example in the perspective of different theorists. So additional instruction, you may write in a paper, please legibly handwritten answer. So dapat maayos ang pagkakasulat para mabasa ko, or type your answer in a Word format or WPS. Follow the instructions so you could earn better points. So I will deduct if you are not following to my instruction. Send it via Google Classroom and attach only the Google link and not the file, so that I could still see even though my storage is already full. So, and also please, if you want to scan your answer, just send it with the Google link. Also inform the teacher or inform me, and please be in a right manner. Okay? So, PM also your tagapag-attendance if done doing the activities. So, plus points to your quiz. So, take a selfie of yours and post it on your FB wall. So, find or have a selfie with your best friends and describe the personalities of your best friends and why do you like them. And then you may share an experience and why are those experience you love and you will not forget it. So have this hashtag, I love my best friend, no to suicide, I love myself, UTS, JFI, swag.